From the beautiful campus of Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, some of the world's most intelligent and influential people will share their thoughts, their travels, experiences, and views with the community, staff, and students of Oakland University when Oakland University presents
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Shelly Appleton, Betty Appleton, your family. We have tonight with us the Chair of the Board of Trustees, who I wish to recognize, Penny Christman, and her husband, Chuck. We also have a distinguished alum who I'm very proud to share. Every month or so we have meetings in Lansing to deal with state budgets and so on. It's another university president, Betty Youngblood, is here tonight, who graduated in 1965. Is that correct? And remembers a lot of wonderful things from Shelly Appleton. Tonight we are here to celebrate and to give heartfelt thanks for the remarkable contributions that Shelly Appleton made to this university and to hundreds of students since arriving on this campus 44 years ago. Hear, hear. When Shelly and his wife Betty arrived in 1960 on this campus, Oakland University was young, a new campus, and still known as Michigan State University, Oakland. You may know that the first students admitted to this university in 1959. There were 570 students in that starting class, 540. When Shelly arrived, it blossomed to 970 students in 1960. Today, you know, the university is approaching 17,000 students. At that time, there were 45 faculty members. And they came to us from some of the best institutions in this country. Today, we are approaching 480 students on our faculty. Squirrel Road was unpaved. I'm sure you remember that as well. The only buildings on this campus were North and South Foundation and the Oakland Center. And Matilda Dodge Wilson could be seen running around campus, going to dances and student activities. Shelly, with a bachelor's degree from NYU in English and History, and a master's degree in History, with a specialization in East Asian Studies, went to work for the State Department as an assistant at the Foreign Service Institute in Washington. From there, he went to the University of Minnesota to earn his PhD in political science and East Asian studies. Shelly shared his love for East Asia with all of his students, most of whom at that time had little idea of the region or could predict its significance to the United States. Many alum have recalled the importance of learning about China with Shelly. Now, you know we've created a website for comments to support Shelly from alums, faculty, friends, and they basically share their memories of Shelly. And one alum wrote, and I quote, "I met Shelly in 1969 in Intro to China, which at that time was a required course. He asked the class to name 5 Chinese people who they had heard of. No one in the class of 100 could name 5. And the most common name on each list was Charlie Chan. And this alum went on to say, it was at that moment that I became a China major and a Shelly Appleton disciple. Shelly was and continues to be passionate about politics. And in a recent article written about his retirement, he talked about why it was essential to pass on to students the importance of politics, saying, and I quote, "It's a matter of life and death. Everything we do is politically related. You eat food that are regulated by the government. Some people are drafted and shot at by governments. It is totally elementary that government is related to everything." Beyond his devotion to students, Shelly's impact on this university has been tremendous. He served as the Associate Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and Associate Provost for Undergraduate Studies. Shelly has inspired his colleagues in ways both large and small. One colleague, Jane Eberwein, who is here tonight, a distinguished professor of English, wrote on the website, and I quote, "If I remember rightly, we first worked together on an AAUP committee, trying to untangle a particularly thorny situation involving responsibilities of professors to each other and to their profession. Shelly showed himself to be a shrewd and realistic man, but also a man profoundly devoted to the highest academic and personal values. After that," she continues, "I've always paid special attention whenever he rises to speak at assembly or Senate meetings, and have appreciated our many hallway and office chats about the university and the world." During his career, Shelly was awarded the first ever University Teaching Excellence Award. And recently, he was named a distinguished professor of political science, the highest faculty award made by the University Board of Trustees. He's had a variety of experiences, beautiful experiences in his life, including an opportunity to interview Harry Truman, march with Martin Luther King Jr., and he's lived in Taiwan. And yet, when asked by a reporter what has been most important to him, he said, "Marrying the woman I married and raising 4 wonderful, wonderful children." Shelly's wife, Betty, has also made significant contributions. As a former recreation therapist for 15 years at Mercy Hospital, past president of the Detroit Therapeutic Recreation Society, and in her current career, performing multicultural storytelling, music, and movements in schools, museums, and libraries in the Midwest. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special opportunity and the privilege to be Shelly's students again as he delivers what is referred to at his Oakland University as the last lecture. And this is a lecture traditionally given by retiring professors from this university. While most of the professors who retire tend to reflect a little bit about their experiences at Oakland, Shelly feels there's too much going on in the world today of importance. So not surprising, he has selected as a topic the campaign issues that weren't. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me recognize distinguished Professor Shelly Appleton.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this sound level right? I feel Gary must have been talking about somebody else. That can't be me. First thing I want to do is to thank you for coming here. Originally, I thought this was going to be a small gathering. Betty and I exchanged estimates. I said 25 to 50 people. Betty said 75 to 100. I said I thought she was crazy. And now we're approaching 200 people. I apologize to you for having to walk from the gold rooms here. They had to change the venue. And I was warned if any more people came that they were going to move it to Cobo Hall. And I want to especially thank people who came from far away. We have people here who came from Dubai, from Washington State, from Maryland, from North Carolina, from California. Thank you is all I can say. I'm overwhelmed and flattered. And thanks to the people who put messages on my message board and the ones who sent letters to me. I appreciate that very much. Students as well as teachers are what make classes go. And one thing I've learned, it's not just me, it's the class. And to get the list for invitations here, I reviewed all my class lists. It took a while. And you were the ones, the people who are here, you were the ones I remembered. You were the ones who made my classes go, especially the way I teach. You know, I don't do the work. I let you do the work. So you were selected. Some of you, it's been 35, 40 years, but yours is a name that immediately brought a face, a long ago face, I may say, to my mind. And I really appreciate your coming. And many of you have gone on to achievements that make me proud, that reflect well on the university, on the academic excellence of this university, a university I'm delighted to have been a part of and has always made me proud. I want to extend thanks to President Russi and Provost Moodgill for hosting this event, and Dave Downing, because this is a work of the College of Arts and Sciences, and special thanks to Julie Lichtenberg, who, would you stand please, who arranged all of this. And Sandy Dykstra, where is Sandy? and Bridget Green, who arranged for this meal. Would you believe that Bridget called me, asked what food I wanted? I told her I'm a mocha nut, and that's why you got mocha dessert. I was calling and adding names. I'd bolt up in the middle of the night and say, oh, I forgot so-and-so, and I'd call the office, and I was afraid that Sandy and Julie were going to hit me, but they were very nice, and till Thursday they were still adding names. And so I want to say to them, could I still add a couple more? Is it too late yet? I also want to take the chance to thank the members of the committee, Nihal Gunwardena, who was the chair, and other members of the committee, some of them here, some of them who couldn't come. And anything that I did that helped at Oakland University had a lot to do with the people I worked for and worked with. I had the chance to work for two fantastic administrators, Keith Kleckner and Brian Copenhaver. Keith is here. And people I worked with at Oakland, did I have a succession of good people to work with? Wow. The late Isaac Eliezer, Priscilla Hildum, Jan Elvacrogue, Rosemary Robinson, Virginia Allen, Augustine Pounds, who came here from Maryland, Marge Hampton, Joe Hairston, and Karen Meyer. Karen is our department secretary. I would never have made it through the last couple of years without Karen, no way. And I want to thank my faculty colleagues and dear friends who are here and who've enriched my life and Betty's. And finally, I want to thank Major League Baseball for not scheduling a World Series game tonight. Thank you, Bud Selig. I owe special thanks to two remarkable people. The first is the late, great Woody Varner. Actually, I was hired. I have two colleagues here who've been here longer than I, Dick Burke and Paul Tamboulian. They were charter faculty members. I was hired before the institution opened, but was away on a grant the first year. A little more than 45 years ago, I was a graduate student at the University of Minnesota. Betty and I were graduate students, and I read in the Sunday New York Times some articles by Lauren Pope, their education writer, who left to come to Oakland, describing a new kind of college that was preparing to open in Southeast Michigan. The article said that, among other things, every student would be required to study societies that were not Western societies. This was right after Sputnik went up, and we were having a national crisis about that. As someone preparing to be a China specialist, I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to teach courses on China, because if I went somewhere else, I'd have to wait years before they allowed me to teach one section on China. So I wrote a letter to the name in the article, D.B. Varner, expressing my pleasure about the kind of school that he was about to lead. And I got back a letter in the mail from Woody saying, no, we appreciate your interest. Why don't you come down and take a look at the school? We'll pay the way. And I went to my advisors at the Political Science Department of University of Minnesota, and I told them about it, and they said, what? Where? You don't want to go there. And I said, but the man said he'll pay my way. And they said, no. I had not taken my prelims. I wasn't looking for a job. I didn't send a resume. I didn't have a resume. So I said, well, I'd like to go and at least take a look at it. And they said, okay, but promise us that you won't take a job. He's not going to offer me a job. They said, promise us you won't take a job. I said, well, what do I do if he offers me a job? They said, okay, here's what you ask for. They said, this is a whole bunch of, the salary is off the wall, the conditions. I didn't have my prelims. They said you should insist on an assistant professorship, which comes with a doctorate, and that he'll buy large numbers of books and Chinese language stuff for the library, which didn't exist, and so forth. I said, yes, sir. And I went over there, and Bob Hoops was the dean, spent the whole day taking me around to show me North Foundation Hall and South Foundation Hall, and a little piece of the Oakland Center, not this piece. And finally, he took me to Woody's office in North Foundation Hall, and Woody sat me down and said, "I like you, young man. What will it take to bring you here?" I thought, this guy doesn't know me. I didn't send recommendations. I didn't have credentials. I haven't taken my prelims. But I recited the stuff that my advisors had told me to say, because they said, you'll say that, and then he'll say, well, you know, I can't do that. I'll offer you this. And you can say, well, I'll go back and think about it. And he said, yes. And I was just totally flustered, which he could see. And he said, well, it's a deal. And I said, well, I really need to talk to my wife. And he said, listen, young man, you told me some pretty bizarre stuff, you know, and I didn't negotiate. I didn't say anything. I said yes. So it seems to me that you're obligated to accept the position. And I said, I need to talk to my wife. And Bob Hoops, who was the dean, was sitting there, said, I think you should let the man talk to his wife. So Woody said, okay, but I want you to call me in 24 hours collect. And I said, 48. And he said, deal. And that's how I happened to come to Oakland University. Well, that's one of the people that I owe special thanks. The other one, even 10 years before that, on my 16th birthday, I had a birthday party. And that birthday party was about as flat as the Detroit Tigers season last year. And then my friend came in with his date, and all of a sudden the party took off like the Boston Red Sox last week. And I told my parents asked me how I liked my date, and I said, I'd like my friend's girl. The party started when she walked into the room, and it ends when she leaves. It turned out that my friend's date was a student at the High School of Performing Arts, if you saw the Fame movie or series. She was studying dance with Martha Graham. She graduated from that school with 2 academic awards and a full scholarship to Bennington. We became casual friends, but for 6 years, till I moved to Washington, D.C., I never asked her out because it never occurred to me that a girl who was so accomplished and exciting would consider having a romantic interest in a guy who wore white socks and carried a slide rule in his pocket. I was cleaning out my desk Thursday, and I found the slide rule. But she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and I'm very grateful to her for that. And almost half a century later, the party hasn't ended. And that's why the critical difference endowment that we're setting up includes students in music and dance as well as in political science. President Russi mentioned some of the things that Betty did. Among other things, she taught in our continuing ed program. She taught at Wayne State University. And one of the students from her choreography class, Garth Fagan, has his own dance company now and won the Tony Award for being the choreographer for The Lion King. He calls her Mama. And somehow, with all the things that were going on, with her career, and putting up with me, she contrived, despite my best efforts, to raise 4 of the most wonderful children alive. And learning from their mother's mistake, each of them managed to choose a spouse equally wonderful. In my years at Oakland, I've seen lots of students, hardworking students. Those of you who've been students here, who work here, know what I'm talking about. Oakland students struggle. A lot of the Oakland students are just barely making it through. And I've seen, because of the lack of small amounts of money, some of them being unable to take internships, which would open doors for them, or take travel opportunities, which could open doors for them in their future careers. I've seen many who've been unable to buy books for the class. I see a student who doesn't have the book. Some of you have been my teaching assistants, and I see you nodding. And I just try and find out what's the trouble, and, well, they weren't able to get the books. I've tried to help them from a special fund, which some alums and Betty and I have contributed to. I think of last year, a student with her head on the desk, a tiny little woman with her head on the desk one day, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yes, but I'm taking care of a 3-month-old in a efficiency apartment by myself." And 2 of my children had just had babies, and we'd gone there to help take care of them. And I got a very good notion of what it meant to take care of a 3-month-old. Even with 4 of us there, we were groggy at the end of the time. And this gal was struggling through. She was caring for that infant. She was holding down a job to pay the rent, and she had to take 12 credits to get financial aid. So I bought some books for her. Another student, same year, last year, father was in combat in Iraq, and he couldn't get the money for books to her in time. So, and when these guys fall behind, and these are not always the students with the strongest backgrounds, they don't have the book for a month, it's really bad for them. It's very hard for them to catch up. Some very dedicated student this past summer who needed a little help to take advantage of an opportunity to study abroad. One of the things I regret is that I won't be here in the future to find ways to try and help these students anymore. And so Betty and I want to thank you for the many of you who've contributed to this endowment, which will help to help these students along. And we've set it up. She and I are going to be on the committee. We've set it up to be very, not loans, but grants. Set it up to be very easy for the students to apply for, no more than 2 pages, no big muss, no big fuss, small committee. So we can do something in 24 hours or 48 hours, because these kids can't wait a month to get started. So that's so much for the part that isn't going to be on the test. Now we get to the real stuff, and I have a surprise for you. I didn't really ask you to come here just to mark my retirement. We asked you here to help launch my candidacy for the presidency of the United States. Let's be frank. The country is facing a number of very serious problems which my opponents have barely touched upon. The money we pay for Social Security is not really put aside in accounts for you. It's being spent, along with all your other tax dollars. When the baby boom generation retires, the generation of many of you here today, there won't be enough dollars to pay you. Despite what my opponents are saying, there's no way to deal with this problem without either cutting benefits, raising the retirement age, raising taxes, or some combination of these. Private accounts won't solve the problem. They'll just make the deficit higher because there's a $1 to $2 trillion transition cost. That is, I and many of you have been paying your Social Security for a while. We don't expect to keep paying more and set up private accounts. Where are the dollars going to come from? The way I see it is that the young people here are going to have the privilege of paying for both our retirements and their own. And that problem is not going to be dealt with either by just making promises. If you think the Social Security problem is bad, think about the medical care problem, the health care problem. We're in an even deeper hole. I've heard lots of great promises about what we'll do for folks who need medical care. Everybody has wonderful ideas. but I haven't heard much about how we're going to fund those promises without raising taxes or running even deeper benefits. Importing drugs from a country with a population a ninth of ours, the size of ours, is not going to solve the healthcare problem. On the education front, we continue to leave children behind, and we're going to keep leaving children behind as long as we fund education almost entirely at the local level. Only less than 10% of the education dollars come from the federal government, and there's a lot of unfunded mandates going with that. And as long as states can write their own standards, I think many of you probably know that when they did the first round of tests, the state which turned out to have the most failing schools was Michigan, and the state which had the fewest, was Arkansas with 0. Do you believe that there are no failing schools in Arkansas? The Meadowbrook School, which my department chair and her husband, both colleagues of mine, send their child to, which won a Golden Apple Award the year before, turned out to be a failing school. But out in rural Arkansas, there are no failing schools. Very interesting. There are structural problems with our electoral system. 85 to 90% of the seats in the House of Representatives are gerrymandered. Instead of citizens choosing their representatives, representatives are choosing their constituents. It makes the elections not very meaningful. And more than that, the real threat to most incumbents is in the primaries, where they have to appeal to party activists who are much more extreme on both sides than the general public, which is in the center. So it forces people to take more extreme positions, and I believe that's one of the reasons for the polarization and the nastiness that we're seeing now in our political life. This is, by the way, I would say, as someone who followed closely every campaign since 1948, the nastiest that I've seen, probably the most vicious. It's not a pleasant spectacle to socialize my students into a political world like this. And in most states, elections are run by elected or appointed partisans rather than impartial civil servants. My oldest daughter, who attended Oakland, married a Brit, and they live in Sheffield, England, and her husband says it blows his mind that we allow partisans to count the votes. Even as we saw in Florida in 2000, where the person running the election can be the co-chair of the campaign for one of the candidates. That facilitates cheating, it provokes suspicion, and it encourages anger and division. What's wrong with this picture? Of course, everyone knows also that big money from special interest groups tends to corrupt our political system. Now, you may be wondering what this all has to do with my presidential candidacy. Well, my fellow Americans, as you may have guessed, I have a plan. Yes, yes. My plan is based on the free marketplace and on total transparency. Unlike opponents, I'll spell out my plan completely. I'm not only going to cut taxes, I'm going to eliminate them. And I'm going to do it while protecting all the benefits and programs we hold so dear and reducing the deficit. Doesn't that sound good? I thought so. Now, I suppose some of you whom I trained are wondering where we're going to get the money to do this. Well, as I say, I have a plan. Here's my plan. Instead of holding these meaningless elections, I propose that we auction all public offices. We'll auction them to the highest bidder, and all the money goes into every bid goes into the public treasury. And the winners can pay the salaries and perks for these people too. Instead of senators from Michigan and California, we can have senators from General Motors, the UAW, the NRA, Microsoft. We can have governors from WorldCom and Enron. Some people would say it's what we have now, but my plan would get it right out into the open. Instead of elections costing money, they'd become our biggest money makers. And most people probably wouldn't mind. I mean, even in presidential elections, half of them don't bother to vote. Some of them probably wouldn't even notice. So instead of wasting your votes on status quo candidates like Kerry and Bush and Nader, vote for a real change. Let's start our revolution here and now and carry it to Illinois and California and Alaska and even to Toledo. Vote early and often. Vote Appleton. Onward to victory in November. Bridget, where's the balloons? Big one. Hold on. All right. Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
I know who I'm going to vote for in 3 weeks. I changed my mind in the last couple of minutes here. Shelly is, as always, funny, provocative, and insightful. My name's Bill Horton. I'm a 1976 political science graduate, and I think one of the members of the Shelly Appleton fan club. I would like to take a minute or so to talk a little bit about Shelly, and also especially about the Betty and Shelly Appleton Critical Difference Endowment. When I was here, Shelly helped me with some big things like curiosity, and some smaller things like some of the mechanics of social science research. Somebody mentioned earlier about some of the Asia study data that you had, Shelly, and I don't know if you remember, but you were snapping the whip on me as I was cutting the data when you got that first Taiwanese stuff out of NORC in the early 70s. But I've tried to put some of this stuff to work. First, I brought my original tool, my social statistics book from Blaylock. Still has my student number and my dorm room in it. And I've put it to use. And after years of careful observation and at least 3 or 4 hours of in-depth research, using my textbook, I've identified a strange effect that Shelly has caused on many people. We've identified this effect and given it the official name of Apple Shellytonitis. But what I call it, for ease of reference, is Appleton syndrome. Some of the symptoms of Appleton syndrome, you may recognize them, are as follows. You signed up for a class just because he was teaching it, and then you looked at the name of the class later, and you said, oh my God, the efficacy of yard signs in Taiwanese legislative elections. And then you think, didn't I take that last semester? Or, if he was teaching it, you actually showed up on time, sat in front of the class, instead of in the back, slouched over your books. Another one that I found that I've participated in, and I actually heard this in the back of the room earlier tonight, is that you competed with others to see who had taken more classes. You know, like when one of your buddies said, yeah, I've taken 4 classes from Appleton, you got really indignant and you said, I've taken 5 and I'm signed up for one next semester too. But the real measure of Appleton syndrome is when you show up at Oakland University on a Friday night years after you graduated to honor a great man. So everybody that here is certified having Appleton syndrome. And actually, I believe that Appleton syndrome was identified by the ancient Greek philosopher Plutarch many years ago when he said that the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted. Shelly, you've lit the fire and fanned the flames of so many, and of this you should really be proud. Now, there's only one known cure for Appleton syndrome. First, you have to use some of the wisdom that you received and pass it on, because it really doesn't wear out. And secondly, you have to give some of your hard-earned money to the Betty and Shelly Appleton Critical Difference Endowment. As Shelly mentioned, the fund is really identified for 2 different groups of people. First, those that in the political science department and those that are majoring in public administration. And also, I understand, with secondary education majors who have a minor in political science, and in recognition of Betty's career, to those students in dance or music education, and especially those people who have an interest in multicultural arts. As Shelly mentioned a moment ago, the purpose of the endowment is to give relatively small amounts of money to students at a point in their lives, perhaps a tipping point, where it will make a critical difference. And he mentioned a couple of examples, and I deposed him on the phone a couple of weeks ago, so I had a couple of examples too. And he mentioned, you know, the student who works all summer to get tuition to come to school, but short a couple $100 to buy the books. But he's working, and he'll get them in a couple months. But a couple months, it's too late. He needs the books now. The single mother that Shelly mentioned who needs and wants some real study time, but is up half the night with that 3-month-old, and I've been there before. And actually, my good wife has been there. I've just had to hear about it some of the times. But what that single mother needs is not to be dozing in class, but she needs the $60 a week for daycare. Or the promising student that has been offered a prestigious internship, but that internship is unpaid. But he has to pass on that internship because he can't give up the $700 that he'll make in a semester at a fast food joint. Of all the things that you've been asked to give money to, I think that this is the most worthy. And I'm shamelessly asking you to give. Now, I have conducted some additional flash research since the endowment has been established. And I got the results this afternoon just before we came here. And again, using my tool, our research has conclusively shown to a 2 sigma confidence level that after controlling for age, gender, race, religion, socioeconomic status, political affiliation, height, weight, hair color, and favorite food, 100% of those people that have given to the Critical Difference Fund are taller, better looking, and have an improved golf game than before they gave. To date, we've raised over $58,000 from 78 donors. And I'm pleased to tell you that we have an anonymous donor who has challenged us to raise up to $75,000. And if we do that, that person will donate an additional $10,000. So if we can make the difference to get it up to $75,000, the fund will immediately have a total of $85,000. Now, I want to mention that there's cards out at the table related to the fund, out at the table out in the hallway, and I would very much encourage you to pick up one of those cards, put it in your pocket, in your purse. Remember, Shelly, and rather than just contributing to his campaign over the next couple of weeks and yard signs, give it to the Critical Difference Endowment. And as I've said, I'll be the one that writes the first check out in the hallway here. And I would like to acknowledge the honorary committee that has helped put this together. Nihal, who we've seen. Nihal, could you stand? And I'd like to introduce everybody on the committee. Bob Kogan, Bob here. Priscilla Hildum. Keith Kleckner. Keith, I saw you. Norm Wackler. And Betty Youngblood. Please join me in honoring all of these people. Thank you. Thank you, Shelly. I'll be looking forward to seeing your television commercials. And I'd like to introduce John Klemansky, who is the chairman of the Department of Political Science. John?
Thank you, Bill, and good evening, everybody. Recently, I was asked by the Oakland Post, which is the student newspaper, to comment on Shelly's career. I said at the time that, quote, Shelly is the professor that the rest of us would want to be. After all, he's continued to have an active research agenda and publication record throughout his career. He is a master teacher and a classroom innovator, and he has done far more than his share of service to the department, to the college, to the university, and the community. One of my first responsibilities as the new chair of political science was to participate in the campus-wide faculty search process, during which we present our best arguments to our deans and then to the provost as to why our respective departments deserve to hire more faculty. In looking at the data from political science, I was first greatly encouraged. After all, our enrollments had increased 75% over the past 5 years on the undergraduate side and 46% in the MPA program. And those are among the highest enrollments, by the way, across all the departments in the college. We've also taken on new responsibilities, including administration of the criminal justice concentration, and we are part of a joint effort with the Department of Economics to offer a joint degree in political economy, as well as part of a multidisciplinary effort to create a new major in international relations. But we've also lost faculty in the department recently. One resignation in 2002 was permanently lost, and we've had 2 resignations just within the past 3 months, including our former chair, Michelle Piskalich, who is now Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. That bad news is compounded by perhaps the deepest wound of all, Shelly Appleton's retirement. When requesting Shelly's so-called replacement position, I thought that whomever we might hire could only in a technical sense be considered a replacement. No faculty member in my memory has had the influence that Shelly has had on his students. During one of our department's alumni advisory board meetings a few years ago, we were discussing what kind of event to sponsor and what kind of strategy to use that would maximize attendance. One of our alums said, just have Shelly Appleton speak, everyone will show up. And I think tonight's audience certainly demonstrates that point, doesn't it? I know I speak for all the campus faculty, not just in political science, but across campus when I say that we will miss you greatly. It's now my honor to present some gifts to Shelly on behalf of the university. And Julie, do we want Shelly to come up, or I can bring them on. Why don't I just show them and then we can bring them down? How's that? So. Our first gift is a clock which says, Shelly Appleton, with appreciation for all you have done for Oakland University, October 22nd, 2004. It's pretty common for us in the Department of Political Science to talk politics, since that's our passion, why we got into the business in the first place. I find it also necessary to talk about departmental business, although I find that extremely boring. And we also inevitably talk about departmental politics, which I wish was boring. So it was always one of my great pleasures at Oakland over the years to find Shelly in his office so we could talk about something else, and that was, of course, baseball. My experience with Shelly has been, in this regard and others, that he's very down-to-earth and well-grounded. In one of our recent conversations, I was doing my usual exaggerating to make a point, and I was complaining about the dismal win-loss record of the 2003 Detroit Tigers, who lost, as we all know, 119 games last season. I told Shelly that, to underscore my irritation with that team, that he and I could field a team of individuals, assume starting positions on the team ourselves, play a major league schedule, and still lose fewer games than the 2003 Tigers. Shelly looked at me and with the patience of a teacher and without any hints of irony, sarcasm, or judgment said, no, we'd lose more than 119 games. In recognition of Shelly's passion for baseball and accepting that he will be rooting for a new home team, I am proud to present our second gift on behalf of the university, a Chicago Cubs baseball jacket. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Shelly.
Let me just say thanks, and obviously couldn't pick anything better. I've really been a Cubbies fan for a very long time. It's a passion I've shared, and the commiseration with Dave Downing. When the Cubbies won the first game of the season, I usually send him the standings and tell him, appreciate this because it's the last time you're going to see them in first place. But the other thing I want to say is, and some students, people say The department won't be the same. We're understaffed, but person for person, the department has never been better. And we've got some wonderful young people who are here today who are better than I ever was, both as scholars and as teachers. And believe it, if you want to come and sit in on their classes, you'll find it's true. They're great. And I feel very happy to leave the department in that shape. Thank you.
All right. Can I give you a hand? Shelly is all laden down with all this loot. Well, that concludes our evening. Thank you very much for making it possible for us to come together, honor an old friend and a great teacher, and also to share in the generosity of all those who are present and yet to come, who will heed the call of Bill Horton. I think it's a wonderful cause, and whoever came up with that anonymous gift really gave us a reason to be even more generous. So I really look forward to staying on top of this from many perches. And thank you, Julie, for bringing this event together. I couldn't have come back for a more auspicious occasion. Thank you all, and good night.